guys? I'm back here with our 25 S1000RR, and today we're going to be doing some stage 2 modifications. Now let's go over the modifications I got here today. First and foremost, I got the Acra header here. Now this is the optional system, which means it will tie right into our stock exhaust muffler. You can also use any slip-on you find on the market. As long as it ties into the stock system, you can use it with the optional header. That's the cool news about that. Next, we got the IAT kit. I'll go over this with you guys. Now, this is for the intake air temperature sensor, and this is just relocating it to the nose of the bike instead of on top of the airbox. I'll go over why we do this and how it's better for your bike. We also have the flapper delete kit. This is for the intake flapper system right here. I'll go over why we do this as well. We've got BT Moto mirror block offs here. This is just a block off so we can get rid of the mirrors. Kind of makes the bike more aerodynamic. We've also got the BT Moto velocity stacks right here, and they do say K66, which means M1000RR, but for those of you that know, the same airbox is in the M1000RR as the 25 S1000RR and has been that way since 2023. We also have a DNA air filter right here. Now, because we are putting velocity stacks in the bike, more airflow is needed. That's where the DNA filter comes in. Now that's it for the performance stuff as far as the bike goes, but I'm also going to be pulling out the combi, which means I'm going to be putting a screen protector on there. I'll go over why on that too, because these screens are really stubborn when it comes to cleaning and smudges and all that stuff. Tank protector, obvious reasons on that one. I'm also going to be replacing this carbon fiber belly pan with a longer one, which looks better. And because we got to take off the side fairings anyway, I'll be going and replacing the plastic top pieces right here with carbon pieces. Now, these aren't all the modifications we have for the bike. There may be about half, maybe not even half the modifications for the motorcycle. But for today, for stage 2, that's what we're going to be doing. And just to let you guys know, after we do the modifications of this motorcycle, I'll be taking it to the dyno and testing stage 2 versus stage 1, because we already did our stage 1 testing. Now, the install today is going to be a brief overview on how to install these parts and little tricks. If you guys want full install videos, I'll leave them in the description for this video. They are step-by-step and they are very detailed in case you guys have any issues installing this stuff on your own bike. So we're going to start at the top of the bike here and work our way down, meaning I'm going to go ahead and do all the modifications we're going to do here by the airbox, the IAT, the velocity stacks, the air filter. So we're going to start by removing all of this. So why do the IAT kit on the S1000RR? Well, BMW was nice enough to put the IAT in the standard location on top of the airbox, which means it gets really heat soaked. We did a video on this and you can see it there in the description as well. I'll put a link where we did a comparison where it showed just the bike idling and it was a 70-degree day. And it got up to about 117 degrees showing from the IAT, but the actual ambient was 70 degrees. Go out and ride the bike, it does fall down eventually after 5 or 10 miles, but immediately you're going to notice light to light, the bike's going to be a dog. After about 80 degrees ambient, the S1000 BMWs tend to pull a lot of power from the bikes. The M1000s do the same thing. So the solution for this is the IAT kit. Now, why did BMW put it in such a horrible spot? Well, this is for compliance and regulation. You got to think, when this bike's on a dyno over for the compliance certification, the bike's making less power, which means it's pulling power from the bike on their dyno. They're not riding this bike on the track or on the freeway for a bunch of miles and logging this bike. They have it on a standard dyno, idling and doing all this other stuff. So it makes a lot less power, which means they can restrict the bike less than they actually would had they put the IAT in a proper location. Now, a lot of people will say, well, the IAT kit's going to adversely affect the bike. There's a reason why they put it there, and if the bike heats up too much or the air is hot in that airbox, the bike's going to be knocking, you're going to melt your engine. That's not true. There's a lot of safety redundancy built into this motorcycle. That means if it is knocking, there are knock sensors on this bike. And when it sees knock, it doesn't have a static ignition map. It's going to fall to a lower ignition map. Now, with the BT Moto mapping, we compensate for a lot of this and make sure the bike's just as reliable, if not more reliable than stock, even with the IAT kit. So that's why BMW does what it does. They love to sandbag all their products. I've pointed this out in a video before, where they're just sandbagging like every single car and motorcycle they've got. And you can see with the IAT, now that we're not on the top of the airbox, we've moved this whole line through here, routed through the bike. I did it so nice and cleanly, you can't even see it anymore. And then ran through the front here, up through here, and you can see the new location for the IAT sensor is right in the inlet there. Now we're getting all that nice, fresh, and clean air. This is probably the best time to install the TFT, seeing as we already have the combi out of the bike. So the protector, I think, is really important for the S1000RR, M1000RR, anything with this kind of TFT. It shows smudge marks on this thing like you wouldn't even imagine. So I leave this always on here, and I'm OCD, so this really angers me to have these bubbles all over it, but at least it keeps the dust off for now until I got that screen on here. And because we did the IAT, we pull this combi out. Easiest way to do this, stick it on now. And you can see here now we got a perfect combi. No dust on it whatsoever. And now this is easier to clean. Now I can actually put a microfiber cloth on this thing, clean it. It's not gonna have those crazy smudge marks like the stock OEM TFT would without this. This is like 50 bucks. I think it's well worth it. It's BMW, says BMW on it. Makes you feel even better about it. And it does protect from any scratches or anything like that. All right, she's looking good. Got it secured to the 3C clips. Make sure that connector is secured in the back. If it's not, your TFT is gonna go on and off, and you're gonna think something else is wrong, but just make sure it clicks in properly. Now we can install the front and back on the bike because we don't need access to this area anymore now that the IAT is completed. All right, so I got the front end of the bike put back together, and I put our BT Moto block offs on there just to show you guys they do work for the 25s. Now, one thing I would recommend to you guys every time you take off the windscreen is clean underneath here, at least this bottom half, because wind gets right here in between and some dust starts collecting here. So any chance you get to take the windscreen off, clean. And I would probably recommend a couple of these rubber grommets, spares, because they're gonna get used up every time you pull this off, clean it, put it back on again. Now I'm going to be installing our flapper delete kit here, but if you do have a BT Moto flash, you don't need to worry. This piece right here that you see right there, these flappers are typically closed. The only air you're getting on the motorcycle without a flash before 6,000 RPM is this little slit right here and this little slit. These doors close and you won't have any air from the main source of the inlet. Our flash, once you start up the motorcycle, will make sure these stay open, so you're good there. But a lot of people, especially people that want to squeeze every ounce of horsepower to this bike, want to at least get rid of these flappers too, because it is an obstruction in the airway. So this is really easy. It's 3 T25s. Now that's gone. Flapper motor comes right out of there, just like that. There we go. Did it with a bolt this time. All the better. There. And now you can see, completely barren. Nothing left in there. We're just gonna use the block off kit now. Okay, and this is easy. This piece goes right on top here. And I like to squeeze it on there. It's kind of hard to get on. This screw in here a little bit. There we go. A little bit of hammering from the soft end of the pliers here. Get that in there. It is extremely tight. Now we're gonna do the same thing for the block offs here. These are 2 spots right there. And there's one more block off right here. You see this goes right in there. So the good news about this fitment, there's no way this is going anywhere. I know that for a fact. In fact, if you ever want to pull this out, it's going to be very hard. So it's a very tight fit. All right, now this is ready to go back in, but before we do that, we do provide now with the kits a servo buddy. So this is in case you ever need to go for service and you got to put the stock tuning back onto the bike. There'll be no error codes with this on there. So go ahead and take this. We're just going to zip tie it up to the PCV valve here. And you can see I'll zip tie it away. I just put one there and then one there to kind of secure it away from everything else. Just make sure it's not hitting anything. Okay, now let's go ahead and sort this air box out. We have velocity stacks and an air filter put in here. First thing, let's go ahead and remove this old stuff. That comes out. This comes out. And that's our OEM filter right there. And I've accessed the whole thing here. Let's go ahead and get rid of these velocity stacks. These just push right out. Really easy. Now, it's typical for an OEM box like this to be seeing some oil. All right, all 4 out, and you can see in there, so I can show you guys. See it's a little bit wet? So I can get a, see, right there. That's oil. That's perfectly normal for the oil to be in here. And that's due to the crankcase breather. All right, I got the BT Moto stack right here, and you can see we've got a rubber O-ring right here. This should stop the oil from coming through the air box into the bike. Just like the rubber does stock, that kind of presses in. You'll feel it's a very tight fit. You just kind of squeeze it in, and you'll feel it barely get in there. And then we'll take the O-ring provided by the kit here. I like to start this side first and work my way around. And there we go. Ta-da, we're all done. You can see them down in there. Those are the BT Moto velocity stacks. Extremely tight fit, and that's exactly what you want to see, so you're not getting any leakage of oil. Now we're going to put the air filter back in here. There we go. Air filter's in now. You can see right there. Velocity stacks in, IAT kit in, flapper delete kit in. Now we got to install the air box back into the motorcycle. So the reason why we got to do an air filter with the velocity stacks is we're actually increasing the airflow. If this is just stage 1, you guys are just doing that, I don't even recommend an air filter. The stock air filter is fine. But if you are doing velocity stacks, I do recommend an air filter. simply for the fact that now we're demanding more air from the bike, we have to give it more air. This actually fits so much better with the velocity stacks because those rubber ones kind of just move around everywhere. Now the airbox just sits exactly where it's supposed to sit. Now the rest of this airbox actually goes together extremely fast. I'll time lapse this for you so you guys aren't bored. All right, now we're wrapped up with the top end mods of the bike, meaning everything under the tank, everything in the front nose. Now the only thing that's left is the Acra titanium exhaust. So we're gonna do that next. Now, I'll also preface everything what I'm doing saying I'm doing it the wrong way, meaning you should be flashing the bike first, making sure it's perfect, there's nothing wrong with the bike, do the next mod, and then do the next mod, and then do the next mod. The reason for that is if you do 20 mods at once, you're not gonna know where the issue is if you do have an issue or what the issue is. So it becomes problem solving, and if you are good at problem solving and you know these bikes very well, and you know what the problem is, then I don't see a problem doing it the way I'm doing it. But if you are kind of clueless when it comes to this stuff, any kind of hiccup with the bike, you're kind of freaking out, I would do one thing at a time. The best way to start the exhaust here is putting the bike up on a front stand so we get as much clearance below the belly as possible, and then we start removing that belly pan. Now the belly pan is really easy to remove. All you gotta do is remove this screw. There's another screw right in the side here. There's a screw here, here, a screw in the back here, screw there, there, and then there's one underneath here. Now you should know how to do this just to change your oil, but I do have some other detailed videos. But for the sake of this video, I'm gonna do this super fast. Now we get the belly pan off. You really can do the exhaust just with the belly pan off, but I'm also gonna remove the side fairings because it's gonna be much easier to record if I remove the side fairings. And just like I promised, we're putting some carbon to replace that plastic because we already have this fairing off. Might as well do it right now, right? So this is really easy on this one. We're just pulling up. That's it. New one goes on. I think I have to transfer over one part, well, actually a few parts. So this is BMW carbon. You can see here the M's not even lining up properly. This is from the old years, and I ordered this for a 25. So this is the old year carbon right here. You can see the M's not really lining up properly. That's just how they come now, I guess. But you can see here compared to stock, not much of a comparison. Plastic, carbon, much needed upgrade. Now I've got some really good exposure there so we can see exactly what we're doing. The next parts are really easy. I've done a lot of these systems, so for me, it's going to be removing the muffler first and foremost, the OEM muffler. Then we're gonna go ahead and remove the narrow bands from the rear section of the exhaust on both sides. And then we're gonna go ahead and remove the wideband connectors from the front section. We have 4 exhaust sensors total. We're gonna be transferring all of these over to the new exhaust system so we can enable the full-time closed loop through BT Moto, meaning the bike is going to tune itself as long as these sensors are working and installed in the new exhaust system. Now the reason we're doing exhaust on the S1000RR is to maximize the stage 2 gains. Now stage 2 isn't required with exhaust, but to get the advertised gains from stage 2, I do strongly recommend exhaust and supporting mods. At the end of the day, we're talking here about air in and air out. So we're maximizing the airflow into the bike with our velocity stacks, our air filter, our inlet kit, even the IAT helps it get a power. Then as it goes through the combustion process and it exits the bike, we're gonna make sure we maximize the airflow leaving the bike. Now on the S1000RR, this is an extremely efficient bike. The stock exhaust actually makes a significant amount of power, almost as much as an aftermarket exhaust system, and it actually does make more than some exhaust systems that we've tested before in the past. We've noticed that Acra makes the biggest and largest gains for the exhaust, so that's what we keep going back to. The gains we're going to see from the S1000 typically look like maybe a smidge of power up top, 1 or 2 horsepower up the top range of this, but then the mid-range gets really nice and full. We're probably adding about 5 to 7 wheel horsepower in the mid-range on the bike, and that's where the real advantage for the exhaust in the S1000 is. As opposed to the Ducati, for example, that's kind of restricted everywhere, and then you throw an exhaust system on it, and it gains big power everywhere. So BMW is just a lot more efficient when it comes to the exhaust and where it matters in that top end. We also can't forget about the exhaust valve, bolt right here, a couple little cables. We're gonna pull this thing right out. Okay, so we got that all wrapped up. Now we're on to the next part here, which is removing this hanger here. That's for the base of the radiator and the oil cooler, so I'll get that out of the way here. It's really just one, I think it's a T27 or T30 or something like that. And I also want to remove the oil cooler, this bolt right here, from both sides, and that gives me a little more space to kind of maneuver the header around. And then we're going to put a sheet of cardboard or something right here so we're not touching the header next to the fins and making damage on the header itself, or sorry, making damage on the oil cooler or the radiator. Don't forget the bolts from the oil cooler to the radiator do have a dab of Loctite, so get some blue thread locker on there, just a dab when you're putting it back in. Now we have a really annoying T45. I'd like to put that down. You see it right back there. This holds the back section of the whole exhaust up. Now for the fun part right here, we got to remove all of the 10 millimeter. These are 12.10 millimeters right here for the header that hold all of the bolts together. You just gotta make sure you have the proper tools, and this is easy. I have a swivel ratchet with a 12 point on it with a 10 mil. And you can see the bolts right there. All I had was this swivel head ratchet and the 12 point. That's all I had. Worked for every single bolt. When you remove these fairings for the side, it makes the job so much easier, a lot more space in there. Now the exhaust is completely free and we can just wiggle this thing out of here. You can see we got the exhaust out of here, and getting it out of here, let me give you guys a couple notes here. When you're pulling it down, you got a knock sensor here and a knock sensor here. The flanges love to hit that, so just make sure you're careful of that, but also make sure you're careful not to back it into the radiator and bend half your fins. Any kind of cardboard will protect the oil cooler, just as long as you're careful. And also, this piece right here, the flange, make sure that doesn't get bent, because that loves to get bent. It likes to get stuck basically right here. You get stuck pulling it out and it just hangs there and you bend the whole thing. You could bend it back with a pair of pliers, not a big deal. Now the main reason people go to the exhaust, of course, is for the power and for the sound, but also the weight. This thing is heavy. Let's find out how heavy. We're gonna start with the stock exhaust here. 19.6 pounds. And now the Acra system. It's not even tripping the scale, hold on. 5.4 pounds. So that's like 14-pound difference right there, just from switching to an Acra. That's a huge weight difference on a motorcycle. Now it's time to prep the Acra header. First thing you do is wipe the whole thing down with rubbing alcohol. Make sure you do it with a set of gloves on. Then install the wide bands. Make sure you put some anti-seize on the threading. And with the Acra header, you have adapters for the narrow bands on the downstreams. You're gonna need those to install the O2 sensors on the rear. The one thing you're gonna wanna also do is make sure the orientation of all these flanges is correct. If it is not correct, your springs aren't going to go on very well. Now, I already have this header completely together, but what I'd probably suggest is kind of how the instructions do. You put these in first, you can put the primaries in. I mean, however you want to do it, you can do it your way. I'm just going to put this in as one giant big piece because this already came off our 2023 S1000RR and it's going to go under our 25 now. So I'm going to do here is slide the full system into the bike as it sits. I'll put all the bolts in there and then I'll start springing it one by one. Now, while I do love the Acra kit, it does not come with any spring pullers, and you absolutely need spring pullers to make this system work. Now, the Aero system, for example, comes with this, but unless you just want to kiss your hands goodbye because this just hurts to put together, I would buy some aftermarket ones. I have different kind of angles for different things, so it makes it easier, it makes the process easier, because springing this thing is going to be probably the most difficult part of installing the headers. Also, when assembling the headers together, make sure you're using the white stuff that comes with the Acra kit. This stuff right here will make sure that nothing gets stuck together and you're able to disassemble this if you ever need to. And you can see we got all the bolts in here. They're nice and loose though, so I have a little bit of room with the flanges. And I'm just gonna put the springs through here. You wanna keep them nice and loose and farther away from the head as possible, because we put the springs in here. And then after we put the springs in, I'm gonna tighten it down. But to get the springs in there, I want as much room space as possible. And this is where the fun starts, guys. All right, after you spring all the headers, see I just have them loose here, I would just go ahead and tighten down all the bolts. The same way you loosened them, and now we're just tightening them. And since this is the last header bolt I'm tightening, I'd be confident in telling you guys, this is the only tool I needed right here. This was it. Just a swivel head with a 12 point on it. This is all I needed. Now we have to get all these springs down here. That's the real fun part. Okay, we are completely sprung here. You can see all the springs are on here. Now, a couple notes about springing the headers. I only used 2 tools. There's just these 2 tools to spring. I didn't use, of course, the kit didn't come with anything, but I got both these on Amazon, different angles. Definitely hit it from the center here to get those center pieces. Those ones are probably the most pain. And the rest of them, decently easy, but getting it through the center here is probably something you have to do, and that means disconnecting the oil cooler is vital, and also having a cover on here for cardboard is also vital. You can see I didn't bend any fins, and my hands were all over this thing, trying to push this thing down, go through here and do all this stuff, and you can see it protects it very well, no bent fins. Also, another trick for you guys here, I know a lot of people with Acra headers will have vibrations at certain RPMs. The reason why is really this stupid spring here at the end here, and you can see I got burned on one of them. If this orientation of the spring, instead of being down, is up, it will rub against this and it will burn it, and then you'll have some vibrations at weird RPMs, like a spring vibration. And that's just the resonance frequency basically having a harmonic on the header itself with the spring. Going underneath it is the best way. It's going to be away from this, and now it's not going to burn, and it's not going to make any rattling noises. All right, we are 100% together with all of our bolt-ons for the stage 2 dyno testing. A couple little tips for you guys. When I'm putting the narrow bands, I unscrew them, meaning I reverse thread them. Like I just kind of do this until the wires are crossing the wrong way, and then I put it back in there, and you can see it's not crossed up or anything like that. It's nice and straight, so you're not just binding all the wires up by spinning it in. It's not going to kill your bike or anything. It's just, I don't know, kind of OCD about that stuff. And for this wide band, which is originally here on the stock header, you obviously have to move it way over here. And you can see I've routed it through here, under here, and then up through here. The main thing for this is you don't want this touching the header at all. You want to take all the slack out of it, basically, and make sure it's wrapped up in here with a zip tie. Now, on the other side here, this narrow band here is a little bit of a pain. You have to actually take where it's connected here, pull it out, and then kind of pull all this down so you get a little more slack. Do the same thing, I reverse it and then put it in there so it's nice and straight again. And then as far as this goes, of course, this was way over here, so we got to take this. I route under here by the oil line right here. And you can see I actually use the OEM clips right there to hold it. Let's see if I can find it. I got one right there, and then it goes down into that one. And then just the slack goes right back into there. But this one's a hard one to get in. All right, ready to go. Stage 2 installed with all the mods. Let's take this thing to dyno and see if all our work paid off. Here at Lee's Cycle in San Diego, our dealer in San Diego, California, we have the 25RR strapped down the dyno. We're going to see what she does now on just pump gas with our Stage 2 OTS, meaning off-the-shelf file. All right, all done with our tune runs for stage 2 with the bolt-ons. And you can see here we have blue, and blue is going to be our stage 2 with the bolt-ons, and red is going to be our stage 1 tuning with no bolt-ons. And you can see it's quite a change, and we're still in the same pump gas. This is 91 California pump gas right here. We're gaining 2-wheel horsepower up top, but it's a consistent gain throughout the entire RPM range here. We're even gaining 4-wheel horsepower right here. If we go to the mid-range where this exhaust is really shining, we're getting over 10-wheel horsepower and 7-wheel torque. That is massive right there in the mid-range. Even way down here, we're getting a couple wheel horsepower and a couple wheel torque, and that's just light to light stuff. So really stage 2 is going to be maximizing the airflow here, and I know a lot of people are going to be sitting here going, well, why isn't it making more power up top? Well, the exhaust on the S1000RR is extremely efficient, so much so that we tested an aero system here, and the aero system made less power up top than the stock exhaust system. I didn't misspeak right now. The aero system made less power than a stock system as we tested it same day, same dyno. We did this a couple years ago. And we were pretty baffled ourselves. It flows extremely well as exhaust. So the fact that we picked up a little bit up top here speaks volumes for our velocity stacks, the IAT kit, and how we tune the bike. Mainly, what people get the exhaust for on the BMWs is right here in the mid-range. When we do the tuning for stage 2, it maximizes all of the modifications to their maximum potential while still keeping the reliability of the bike. Now, that's not all we did with stage 2. We also did partial throttle tuning for that 25, 50, 75, and 100% to maximize the modifications on the bike with a smooth tip in, but more response. The quick shifter even got some attention for more aggressive quick shifting in the racing range. Now, how about we compare the 2025 S1000 here in blue against the 2025 Ducati Panigale V4, both on pump gas. You can see in the mid-range up to the top range, the Ducati V4 is getting destroyed. And we're talking in torque and horsepower, which is crazy to think about with 1103 cc's. I mean, we're talking about, that is almost 20-wheel horsepower. It's like 15-wheel horsepower, basically. That's crazy. And even the torque numbers here, this shift cam is absolutely nuts. That's 10-wheel torque. But here's what happens. We start trading places right here where we're racing at a track. This is where it all counts, right? So right there at 11,300 RPM, the Ducati V4 takes over all the way to its red line of about 15.5, and this is where it counts at the track, and this is where Ducati is doing their thing. In the mid-range here, not really doing much against the S1000RR though, so if you're going light to light constantly, you don't really see 11,000 RPM a whole lot, the BMW is definitely a better buy. But if you're over here at the track, Ducati V4. So now that we wrap this up, let's go ahead and drain the gas out of here. All right, show you guys, got this tank completely drained 100%. See, she is done. We're gonna fill it up with MR12 and let's see how much power we can get. All right, the MR12 runs are done. You can see we're getting some good results here with that exhaust and maximizing the power for the modifications. We're just getting power everywhere except for the very top where it looks like that head is just done breathing at this point. We're making 211 peak to peak on both the stock and the modified with exhaust. And keep in mind, this is an Akrapovic exhaust. This is not some kind of Chinese off-brand thing. This is the best exhaust you can possibly buy that's known to make the best power for the S1000RR. It's not making any power over the stock system. But you can see maximizing the potential for these modifications with the MR12, we're making a whole lot of power. That's not just mid-range, that's almost the entire range. Now this is to show you guys exactly how much power we've made from bone stock, meaning we've rolled it here on the dyno with absolutely zero modifications and no tuning. We go from that 191 to 211 rear wheel horsepower. That's 20 wheel horsepower gain, peak to peak, and we're also gaining 11 wheel torque. We have that soft limiter there where we're getting 24 wheel horsepower at red line and almost 10 wheel torque. In the mid-range here, this is almost inconceivable. It's over 20 wheel horsepower and 14 wheel torque. I mean, this is a different bike basically at this point. And like I said before, this isn't just wide open throttle tuning. We're doing partial throttle tuning. We're doing tip-in. We're doing quick shifter. The fans, there's so many things we're doing with this bike to maximize it for the modifications installed. There's a lot of important things you got to do. You can't just de-restrict these bikes. I've heard a couple people say, well, you guys are just de-restricting the bike. Yeah, we do de-restrict the bike. We also do 300 plus more changes in the ECU other than just de-restricting it. And what that translates to is a much smoother and better overall ride without compromising any rideability or reliability from OEM. Now how we accomplish that is we have a whole bunch of ignition tables on this bike. And with those ignition tables, the majority of them are left stock, including the emergency mapping, which means if you're to put 87 pump gas or some kind of bad pump gas in here and it starts knocking, the knock sensors will pick that up and it'll actually put you into a lower timing map, which means the bike will feel more doggy, but it's not going to be knocking anymore. A lot of other tuners, what they'll do is they'll just take all of the maps and globally change the ignition to get you more power. That's the wrong way to do it. We actually check the knock sensors for true knock and then we alter the high ignition tables, meaning we're keeping everything stock except when it sees no knock and it goes to the highest ignition tables, and that's how we're able to make adaptive fuel mapping. Not only that, but we're utilizing, of course, just like we do with stage 1 with stage 2, full-time closed loop, meaning this bike tunes itself. That's a BT Moto exclusive. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, they can do it, they can do it. I have not seen one ECU that has come in from a competitor that could actually do it. We're the only people that can actually do it properly, where it's making changes the entire time you're riding. It's full time, not just partial. Now stock, I've heard a lot of people say the bike does the stock. It does do its stock, you're right, but it's only for partial throttle and low throttle inputs. It's not for wide open throttle. It's not for any kind of racing. It isn't for that. It's just for small changes at partial throttle. All right, guys, we're getting the rear sprocket put on the stock wheels. So we're just gonna knock this out real quick so we can get more top end out of this bike, because right now with that gear ratio or the way it's geared at the moment with the tire and everything we've got, 188 miles per hour on GPS for stock and modified. That's all we saw with stage 1. So now we're gonna raise that and see how much, we'll see if we can get, how close we can get to that 200 mile per hour marker. All right, guys, and that's a wrap for the 25 S1000RR as far as the mods go. I'm gonna put a little bit of a caliper kit on when I get home so we can lower the front of it so we can get as much speed as we possibly can when we try to go to the top end of this bike and refresh our 60 through 130 times. All right, guys, back here at our 60 through 130 spot, and I'm gonna be testing to see how much better stage 2 can do versus our stage 1 flash. Now, putting all the parts on the bike and maximizing them with a stage 2 flash is gonna be what the difference is here versus stage 1. And we're gonna see exactly how much we can stretch this bike out past 188 miles per hour as well, or see how much real estate we got for that. So let's get started.
guys, so that wasn't bad there. We got a 3-second 60 through 130 and a top speed of 194 miles per hour. That's much better than the OEM 188 miles per hour. And also keep in mind, while yes, it is a high 3-second 60 through 130, I'm also almost 200 pounds suited, 6'3" guy, and I also started in second gear to keep it apples to apples comparison. Thanks, man. Keep it apples to apples to comparison with our stage 1. So we managed to shave a few tenths off our 60 through 130, and that's quite an accomplishment considering all we did was basic bolt-ons and tuning, and that's it. And we stretched out that top speed by changing the rear sprocket. So that's why I recommend to you guys, if you want to go top speed bikes, you got to keep in mind your weight. Now I have a 44 tooth in the back of this. That's keeping my weight in mind because this bike barely climbs in speed with my weight on the bike. Now if I was a lighter guy, 130, 140 pounds, I'd probably get away with a 41 or 42 tooth sprocket because weight matters that much. So overall, considering the entire build, I think we have an amazing bike overall, number 1. Number 2, we have a hell of a fast bike. Anything in the 3-second 60 to 130 is considered like rocket ship fast. I mean, all I'm doing is getting looks on this bike right now. Everyone's loving this bike. So great bike, looks very intimidating. And you guys are looking for something track focused, we also do that as well. And we have audible traction control and track focus tuning that takes into account slick sizes and everything. So we have something for everyone, not just people going for a top speed. Stage 2 takes into account a whole bunch of things, a lot more than Stage 1. It's a very polished Stage 1, I guess you could say. Stage 1 being the foundation of everything, de-restriction, basic fueling and ignition. There's a whole lot of basics that go into Stage 1 and basically just clearing out the annoyances and getting people what they want out of the bike. Now Stage 2 goes a step further. We mess with injector timing, we even individual cylinder tune. There's a whole litany of things we go through and brush up and refine on Stage 2. And it's made for people that are living at the top end of the bike. The question we get a lot is, you know, will I get the same kind of feeling from going from stock to Stage 1 as I will going from Stage 1 to Stage 2? And that's just not the case. Stage 2, like I said, is a refinement, meaning it's going to make everything much better as far as keeping up at the top end of the motorcycle. Now that doesn't mean we're brushing off the mid and low range. You still got all of that, and we still got all the improvements there as well, but it's meant for those keeping this thing at a high RPM range, making the bike so it's more of a race bike than anything else. I would say Stage 1 is for people that rarely go to the track, if ever. They cruise around the streets, they kind of give it a couple hits here and there. Stage 2 is meant for the people that live in the power band of this bike. And as far as this bike versus the 23, for example, that we had, which is the same as the 24, this bike is just a lot more refined. That's all it is, really. The engine seems to be performing exactly the same. We're seeming to get the same numbers out of the Stage 2 from the 25 S1000 as we are from the 23. So there's no huge improvements on the engine itself. It's really just the refinement, the quick shifter, how the bike feels overall, the quick action throttle. That plays into the overall feel of the bike. And of course, let's not forget about the striking looks that we get from the 25 and all the downforce from the front end. If you're a track guy, the 25 is a great option for you. So I think that's gonna do it for this video. We will be doing a E85 video, so we'll have this thing in the dyno for E85 to show you guys exactly how we do that and how we integrate the full-time closed loop into the benefits of the bike itself. And we'll also be doing a comparison with our 25 V4 long-term, meaning I've ridden this thing for a couple thousand miles, I've ridden the V4 for a couple thousand miles, and I'll give you my input on what I feel is the better bike because I've ridden so many of these new bikes now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.